All right, John, bear with me. I got a little wind up of an intro for you, but after that, it's all you. It's mostly about at what age are you introducing Darwin to the Frank Herbert Dune canon, but we can save that for the podcast.
I know. I should just start reading it to him now, huh?
Man, I not to bog it down, but the twins this summer were like, "What's Dune about?" And I was like, "How do I sit
How do I
down?" You
even
know?
start
Yeah,
this?
right. Okay. All right, we'll get into it. All right, welcome to the Lineup's 200th episode, and we're very happy to be talking to today's guest for such a momentous occasion. He is someone whom listeners to this podcast will be familiar with, fans of the WSL will be familiar with, fans of surfing will be familiar with, and hell, just fans of good human beings will be familiar with. He is 31 years young, but for surfers like myself, he's been in the global surfing spotlight since he landed his first Surfer magazine cover at age 12. Anointed is a word that gets thrown around a lot, but it's completely appropriate here. This young man was anointed, against his wishes, I'm guessing, by the surfing world as the quote-unquote next best thing, which is likely as damning an experience as the surfing world could muster. And let's face it, we're all familiar with the too much, too soon, child star horror stories that exist well outside of surfing as well. Which is why what today's guest has managed to achieve both in and out of the water is so remarkable. He is a 13-year veteran of the Elite WSL Championship Tour with 9 CT wins to his name, 2 world titles, and more mind-blowing performances in all conditions than you can count. As of recording, he is the current world number 1 and has confirmed his spot into September's world title deciding Lexus WSL finals at Lower Trestles, and he is weeks away from representing Team USA at the Paris Olympic Games with the surfing event taking place at Tahiti. Outside of the water, he is the founder of Florence Marine X, which he now runs alongside his brothers Nathan and Ivan. He's a beekeeper, he's a sailor, a photographer, a filmmaker, and now he is a new dad to son Darwin alongside his beautiful wife Lauren. We have the North Shore's very own John Florence with us. John, welcome back. Thank you so much for coming back on the lineup for our 200th episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dave.
Well, right on. We are catching you in between events, right? We've just wrapped up the Tahiti, El Salvador, Brazil leg. We're a couple weeks out from the Paris Olympic Games starting with the surfing event happening in Tahiti. Where do we find you today, and what have you been getting up to?
Yeah, this is kind of like it's like the midpoint of the year, but not quite the midpoint of the year, a little bit past it, but like kind of like the break for me in the year, I felt like. And so I'm kind of like in a big reset point right now. We just came off a long leg of events, nonstop traveling back and forth for me because we just had our baby before Tahiti, and so I've just been coming home every chance I get, even if it's only for 2 days. And I definitely got home from Brazil and I was like, whew, okay, now just like I'm just gonna sit down and do nothing for a couple weeks.
Well, you've always struck me as like, I guess it's all relative, but certainly within the surfing world, like a pretty organized person, like whether it's with your equipment, planning out your years, your projects, whether they're competitive or artistic. And so it's interesting to hear you say we're a little bit past the midpoint in the year, which we are obviously the calendar year, but we're almost to the end of the CT season. But when I guess we'll put the fatherhood thing off to the side for a second, but when you approach your years, do you kind of carve them out in quarters and say, okay, I know I'm competing across these months. I have these other, maybe they're sponsorship projects or maybe they're film projects or just kind of like, reset projects for me at home. Do you kind of map your year out that way, or do you just kind of take it as it comes?
No, I definitely map my year out a bit. I think now I kind of map my year in the sense of going like, okay, I have one main focus this year and this is my focus and I put everything into that. And I have my hobbies and stuff kind of around that I guess take a break from it here and there. But for the main part, like, coming to this year, just going like, okay, I'm fully committed and competing this year. And I'm doing the Olympics, I'm doing the tour, we're having a baby. There's a lot happening.
Right.
And so I kind of like within that break it up into the sections of the tour because that's kind of the main part of the travel, And so for me, this feels, even though, yeah, we're towards the end of our tour season, it feels like a midpoint for me because I think the Olympics and then the finals are just they feel like bigger events, and it feels like, okay, like this is the last big, like, hurrah, like here we go. And so I don't know, it just feels for me like, okay, I'm taking a step back, resetting, and then like going all in again.
It's interesting to hear you say that too, because this came up actually in the last few weeks. Mitch Salazar is a co-host on the podcast on occasion, and we always talk about, the surfing world loves the Gabriel Medina, John Florence rivalry. And I said, I get it. Like everyone wants to replicate the Andy Kelly thing. I said, but if you actually look at the trajectories of their career, they very rarely have kind of mapped together when they are both fully healthy and like focused, because Gabe wins his world title in 2014, you're ascendant, you win in 2016, 2017, and then for both of you since then it's been injury years and other projects maybe taking focus, or just kind of lifestyle stuff depending on who it is. When you were entering into 2024, did you feel fully healthy? And I mean, proof's in the pudding, the results have been fantastic, but did you think finally I'm healthy, my boards feel good, I'm all in on competing this year?
I think 2024 for me was more mentally like healthy, competing all in. I think the last few years have been a little bit tough. I've been a little bit 1 foot in, 1 foot out, kind of like I'm here, I'm competing, but I don't know if I want to be here right now. I don't know if I want to be doing this right now. And so for me, that's a really tough spot to be in. And it's almost worse than being injured, because I just like, I get into these heats and I'm just like, oh, like I have some good heats, I have some bad heats, but the emotional roller coaster when my mind is like that is so much more. It's like the highs are really high and the lows are really low. And it's just like this. And then, I get 3 or 4 events into the year and I'm exhausted and I'm like, I don't want to do this. What am I doing? So I think that was the difference for this year. I kind of came into it and, I just went, you know what? I'm committing fully. This is what I'm doing this year. I'm 100% in. I'm going to do what I can. And I think within doing that, it allowed me to relax a little bit, because I knew I was committing to this thing, and I'm kind of all in. And weirdly enough, I feel lighter and more relaxed than I did the past 3 years.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of it also, just as a fan, it can come down to waves too. I remember when I was a kid growing up, and I mean, the world's changed so much, but like such an acolyte of, Rabbit Bartholomew's Dream Tour concept. And the exposure that fans would get is like, maybe if you're lucky enough, the tour will come to your hometown and you get to see it live. But other than that, it was like magazines with awesome photos or like highlight video parts. And this was never the case. But as a kid, you're like, man, the Dream Tour, every heat in every round on every single day must just be pumping. And that was never the reality. But now that it's like the information age is here and we get so much exposure to it, we're like, man, this heat's kind of slow. Oh man, this is kind of not a great day. And it's like that always happened, but we're all just so much more exposed to it now. And I think last year, being that transitional window between, La Nina and El Nino, we had kind of a rough run of forecast. This year, considerably better. And I'm sure that helps just in terms of motivation, even after you going like, I'm all in and competing this year. When the waves turn up, it must get you excited.
Yeah, 100%. When the waves are good, it's just, I don't even have to think. I just go surf. And for me, that's like my best self, is when I can just like take a deep breath, let go, and just really just let myself surf. And I get a lot of excitement out of good waves. I think most surfers do. But yeah, this year's been an interesting one, because we've had really good days, but we've had really tough forecasts at every event. We've had like Margaret River, like the last day ended up being good, but before the last day was like lay day after lay day, run a couple heats, go on hold, run a couple more heats, go on hold, goes flat, like the flattest I've ever seen WA in all my years of going there. And then, even Tahiti being like, we had that really good day, but there was still some kind of in between size days. And like, so yeah. And then so there's been really challenging events, but then the days that we've had that are really good have been great.
I heard Brett Simpson say this to me years ago, and he said, I actually prefer competing on the QS, like at the US Open, because it's a set schedule. And I know, like as an athlete, I know that whatever it is, like at 9:30 in the morning on Wednesday, I know I'm competing. So I can prep my sleep and and the CT is different, because it's like, we're going to wait for the best waves. And it's like, you're constantly having to be primed to perform. And as you said, if there's tricky days before the actual performance, it can really throw you off a rhythm.
Yeah, and it kind of is like if you're in those early heats too, it's
Mm.
like you're on edge, you're on hold the
Right.
whole time. You're waking up every day at 5:30 in the morning and being like, I know it's going to be flat, but there's a call. I have to be up and I have to be ready. And so you're just in this kind of funny state of just waiting for days on end, and that gets pretty exhausting within itself.
We always joke that the first heat of the elimination round was always the hardest button to button in terms of calling it on, because you get the highest seed who lost that doesn't want to go home. So they're in that first heat and they're just like, nope, it's never good enough. I don't want to go out there. And like,
I
for,
don't make me do it.
yeah, for years when it was like when Kelly was like, peaking it in the events that he would be like in that first heat, we're like, we're never gonna run round two, man. It's just never ever gonna. But back to that like feeling comfortable and navigating kind of the contours of an event window. Have you changed anything up just with your support crew, because you've been with a lot of the same people for years now? So who's in the mix, and is it similar to past seasons, or have you've done anything different in 24?
I've done a couple of things different in 2024. I think when I said I was committing, I really was committing, and I kind of went with like a full team this year, and I
Mm.
have done that in the past. I've done versions of it, but this year, like I've been traveling with Ross, who's my coach, Brandon, who kind of helps manage everything on the road and business stuff as well, and then Eric, who films. And then everywhere we've been going, we've been hiring a cook as
Mm.
well to kind of help with the nutrition side of things.
Interesting.
And then also a physio, Chris Prosser. I've been traveling with him a bunch this year, and he's been helping me.
Yeah.
And I think just the addition of all these things and just like making sure like that I'm just as ready as I can be. So when the day comes, I just can really just like let go and just be like, you know what? I just have to surf today. I've done everything that I can.
Mm.
And for me, that feels really good. And it's funny though, because you get to these events and you're like, I have all this stuff, and it almost creates a pressure
Mm.
sometimes.
Right.
But then I kind of like got into this rhythm of just like, it's almost for me is like, I'm like giving the like a ton of respect to like the sport in that sense of going like, hey, like this is hard. I'm doing everything I can to beat these guys, and I understand that the injuries that I've been through and just the past few years. And so for me, like I kind of got to that, and I was like, yeah, like I'm doing this. I'm going to do this full on.
It makes sense. Like we talk about it where like surfing probably is a sport where you guys and girls are competing in the most dynamic field of play in all of sports. Like the basketball court's always the same, the football field's always the same, but for you guys, like no actual wave is the same. And it makes sense that an approach that's been effective for someone is to kind of, okay, if I can create a support mechanism where it cuts down on as much noise as possible, and as you said, all I have to do is focus on going out and surf, I've done all the work, you probably set yourself up for success, even more so than other athletes in other sports where, again, if the field of play is static, then you're like, I know how high the basketball rim is, right? Kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it's funny too, because I mean, surfing's a different sport. Obviously, there's a lot less money than some of those bigger sports like
Right.
football and basketball and Formula One and things like that. But the support teams that those guys have around them is insane. And
Right.
the athletes at the top of their sports, they don't nickel and dime it. They're like, okay, I want to be the best, and I'm going to put everything into it. And so, I just when I look at that, I just feel like, yeah, I want to invest in myself, and I want to do it as good as I can.
It's interesting. And you're someone who's sort of occupied like a very rare layer of the atmosphere as far as global sporting icons go. Have you been exposed to the way that other kind of athletes at that level in other sports just go about their business? And have you picked up tricks along the way, or has it been more like self-discovery for you?
It's been a little more self-discovery and kind of what I need for what I'm doing. I think every sport is so different.
Mm.
And just, yeah, like being on the tour for 13 years now and really kind of going through, the first few years of growing and learning, okay, how do I want to compete? How do I want to do this? And actually seeing Kelly, like in his last couple world title years, like he had a chef, he had someone working with him, like he had huge teams with him to get him to that level. And I mean, a lot of it, 90% of it is Kelly being Kelly, but
Mm.
even if it's that extra 10% helping, I think I learned a lot from that. And I was like, oh, if he's going all in, like I want to go all in. I want to beat all these guys. And so, and yeah, just kind of over the years, mixing and matching and kind of figuring out what formula works the best.
I guess that's the thing. Like, it's like, as you kind of articulated so well, the last thing you want in a heat is to be like, oh, that person did that extra thing and I could have, but I didn't. It's like, as you said, it's like you've done all the work and now it's just time to perform. If you're looking at your performances throughout the year, and I'll run through them really quickly, second to start the year at Pipe, fifth at Sunset Beach, ninth in Portugal, 17th at Bells, second in WA, second in Tahiti, winner in El Salvador, and a fifth in Saquarema. Results aside, is there an event where you, John Florence, in your own self-assessment of your own performances in and outside a competition were like, this is where I've been surfing the best so far this year. This is where I've felt the strongest?
I feel like El Sal, I got into a really good rhythm and I felt like I was surfing really strong, and just kind of surfing the way I wanted to. The waves were really fun. And then I also felt like WA, I kind of the last day started getting into that rhythm again too. And then Sunset, I was actually feeling really good, and I just kind of made a mistake in my heat, and that one kind of digs at me because I had such good energy and I was feeling so good, and I was just like, I didn't just put that, like, I was kind of looked at this wave and I was like, I don't think I can really get that. And then Jordy ended up getting like an 8 under priority inside of it, and I was like, now looking back, I'm like, I'm pretty sure I could have got that wave if I gave it my all. Yeah, so I do have those ones where I just look back and I'm like, I was feeling really good, damn it. And the waves were good. It was just fun. Everything was lining up.
Well, missed opportunity aside, you're the current front runner, right, on the rankings. You've locked in your spot for the WSL finals, which since we started, this will be our 4th year, you have not participated in yet. And I know that you were part of that really early conversation. I want to say it was like in Fiji in 2017, where the idea of winning in the water was discussed for the first time, and you were a big proponent of it. 2 questions, I guess. We have one more event to go. You've already locked your spot. This event is in Fiji. Are you approaching this event differently than you would otherwise, knowing that you don't need a result, that, being healthy for the world title event is important, or are you just going out there and surfing? And then secondly, just general thoughts on qualifying for the WSL finals and having a shot at the world title on the day.
Yeah, so I think for Fiji, with the points I have right now, I think I don't know, I got to do the math, but I think I just have to show up or make one heat or something to lock in the first spot.
Sounds right. Yep.
And so I am going to it kind of more of a fun event / like, hey, like, I'm going to kind of use everything I've used this year, relax, surf good, and I want to win that event more than anything. Like, I'm here to compete. That's my whole thing this year, is serve as many heats as I can and just learn from every heat. And so I think kind of mixing and just getting ready for that last event really is like what it will be for me, is like a good practice event.
Right. And thoughts on the finals? Like, you're going to be there on the day, as we said, unless something radical happens. You will be the top seed. So you'll have at least 2 shots, if not 3, to claim your 3rd world title. Have you thought about that much since it was confirmed, and just any kind of general thoughts on how you're going to be approaching the day?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm really excited about the finals. I'm a little bit nervous because I haven't done it and whatnot, but I don't know. I was thinking about it, and like the waves I get to surf this year, the rest of the year in events, are Tahiti, Fiji, and lowers. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be fun. Like, I haven't got to surf an event at lowers since we had it as a CT, and it was literally one of my favorite events on tour. It's just such a rippable wave. It's like, I don't know, it feels like the wave that you can put all your power into it, but the wave doesn't like bite back. And so you can you can really surf that wave like any way you want, it feels like. And so I don't know, I feel really excited for that. And just, I don't know, whatever happens, I'm excited, and I just trust that like my surfing is good enough, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be an experience.
Well, before that, and before Fiji, we obviously talked about it. You're going to be representing Team USA in the Paris Olympics this summer. Surfing event's going to take place in Tahiti at Teahupu. It's going to start at the end of July here. You were in the very first Olympics that surfing had back in 2021. It's 2020 Olympics that got bumped a year because of the pandemic. It was in Japan. compare and contrast your feeling now heading into the second Olympics. Obviously, the venues are radically different, but also this is your second crack at it. Like, does it feel much different for you? Are you thinking differently because the venue's so different? Like, how are you experiencing, the run up to this year's Olympics? Yeah.
It feels a lot different to me, and I feel a lot better going into this Olympics just because, one, I didn't just have an ACL surgery like
Right.
a month ago. And then two, I think just being in such a good headspace for competing this year and just really feeling excited about being in heats and wanting to be there. And then it being at Chopo, which is like just one of the best waves in the world. I don't know. Surfing Chopo is just in a heat. There's no one out, and you can place yourself where you want to place yourself, and you take off on these waves in the position that you want to be in, and you're just standing in these big barrels. And I mean, I hope it's big barrels, but
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
yeah. But so I'm really excited about it, and I think I learned a big thing last time I went to the Olympics is like everyone really built the Olympics up like it was a different event. Like everything was going to be totally different, and really it's not. Like you get out there and it's still a timed heat with surfers that you're surfing against, and you're being judged and scored and whatnot. And so going into this one, I feel a lot more relaxed about it and not so like, what's this going to be like? This is going to be so different. And yeah, because I know like anytime I'm in a heat, as soon as I jump in the water, it's like everything behind me disappears, and I'm like, I'm in my happy place. And so, yeah.
I like it. I'm going to put you on the spot here before we go to break, but given everything you've achieved already in your young career, all the CT wins, your world titles, do you look at the gold medal as something that you definitely want to add to that? And I guess the question I'm putting you on the spot with, if you had to choose between winning the gold medal or winning your third world title, which would you choose?
I'd probably choose a gold medal because it's one of the things that I haven't won yet. I feel like if I win a gold medal, I can say I've won a lot of things in surfing.
There you go. It's a good answer. We're going to take a quick break to get a word in from our sponsors, and we will come right back. All right, we're back. This is the Lineup's 200th episode. I'm Dave Prodan here with two-time world champion John Florence. John, you mentioned 2024 was a huge year for you when you set out. You were all in on competing. You wanted to win your third world title. You wanted to win gold at the Olympics, and you knew that you were becoming a father. And that's pretty recent. So if you're okay with it, maybe just walk us through the timeline, like, when your son was born, like if that felt like it immediately changed anything for you in your personal and or professional life, or if you were kind of ready for it, it felt like an easier transition than you imagined.
Yeah. So just this year in general, coming up to this, like the start of this year, I was like, okay, here we go. This is a big year. Like I'm committed on the tour. I'm committed to the Olympics. We're having a baby. Like there's just so much happening. And I think just like taking it one step at a time has been the just biggest and best thing ever, because I've really been able to enjoy every part of it. And then, like having our baby just before Tahiti and that lining up really perfect so that I was able to go to Tahiti. Like we were kind of like, I don't know if this is like the way the due date was happening. It was like, I don't know if this is going to work out if he's late a week or something like that. And so
right.
Just being able to be home for a week and then go down and do that event and just surf good waves. And so it's it's been a lot, but it's been a lot of fun also, and just kind of taking it like one thing at a time and just really trying to enjoy it.
Did it feel different, like that first event after Darwin was born? I guess it'd be more from like a psychological or mental perspective, but you hear about it all the time from, elite athletes that then become parents. And of course there's the logistical challenges and the extra complexity that comes with like day-to-day life. But a lot of them talk about like a focusing and like a harnessing of motivation, even in the first few weeks of becoming a parent, because they're like, oh, I've got this, I'm a new person now in a way. I'm wondering if you felt any of that as well.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Like, I don't know if I felt like, okay, like I'm more motivated to go and compete now because I was leaving. I was like, wait,
sure, right, yeah, right.
I don't want to leave. If anything, I was like, maybe a little like, wait, should I go to Tahiti? Like, or should I stay home for this first few weeks, And then I think once I was there though, and I kind of just was like, more than anything, I just felt like light and I felt like happy and just excited, and like showing up to Tahiti was just like I was like sad to leave, but then also just happy the way everything turned out. Everyone was healthy, happy, and my wife's so good with the baby, and so she just takes care of him like unbelievable. And her parents were here, my mom was here, like we had so much support. And so it's just really the perfect kind of situation for me to go off and compete, and I just feel really good about that. And so that made me feel good about going and competing and feel light and happy, and just, and I guess it took a little pressure off in a way, because I'm looking at him now and going like, okay, this is the most important thing in my life,
Right.
and my life doesn't depend on winning or losing. Like that is a separate thing. And that is me going and surfing and just being able to let go and trust myself. And if I surf good, I'm really stoked. And if I surf bad, I can like think about it. And if I have a tough heat, I can think about it and work it out and figure it out to do better the next time. So it kind of changed it in that sense. It took a little pressure off almost.
That's really well articulated. I think you nailed it, where it's like feeling lighter because everyone's happy and healthy, which is such a blessing. But I guess, as you pointed out, it's like it's even harder to leave. But I guess what you lined up was like, well, now that I'm here and I'm here to do the job, I'm light, but I'm focused on doing well, because I realize how valuable that time is, and that it's, whether you're calculating the sacrifice or not, you're like, I'm here to do the thing. And
Yeah. And I feel like you click out, like you're clicking,
yeah,
like you're at that home dad life, and you're like up every night, and then you go to Tahiti and you're like, okay, now I'm sleeping and I'm here, and all I have to do is think about this, like,
yeah.
so you're like going from like one thing into the next, like, yeah.
It's a good exercise in being present. I've found, and I'm fortunate. But I loved what you said, like, because I felt very similarly. Not that I was ever like overly concerned with like achievement or legacy, but like the second my kids were born, I'm like, oh my God, like that's hands down the best thing I'll ever be able to do, ever. And so as you said, it's like, oh, it's about them now, and like that. Then it's a really like galvanizing piece. And I know that you're, and respectfully, excuse me, like a pretty private person, but I'm wondering if, I guess you're a fairly new dad, but for me, it was, as a parent, you're like, okay, how do I give them the best parts of me and try to protect them from maybe the things that weren't great, and it involved a lot of excavating of my own relationship, as a son or a brother or a daughter, or not a daughter, but like, like, how do I become the best version of a parent for this person? And then I had to evaluate like, well, who I was is like in all these other parts of my life. I'm wondering if that's hit for you yet at all in any capacity.
Yeah, no, it definitely has. I think from the moment he's born, you're looking at him and you're like, oh no, he's like taking stuff in, and he's learning, he's like starting to figure stuff out. And it's kind of stressful in a way. But I think for my wife and I, like the biggest thing is like we're just focused on us being us, and our little like
Yeah.
family unit. And like I think me giving the best version of myself to him is going to be me just being present and being there, and not being sidetracked when I'm with him. But when I'm with him, it's just like, hey, I'm here. And so, yeah, that's kind of been like whenever I'm here and I have the time, and it's just been like, I'm here.
Good for you guys. And as you pointed out, like Lauren's such an awesome person too. So it doesn't shock me at all that she's a great mother to Darwin. On the topic of family, I had to look this up because obviously you and I talk pretty frequently, but I'm like, well, I know he's been on the podcast. Time's a bit of a flat circle. And I'm like, oh, it was April 2020 when we recorded and when you were on. And I'm like, oh, that was like right in the midst of the beginning of the pandemic. It's no wonder my memory's foggy. But relatedly, I'm like, was Florence Marine X a thing yet? And I don't think it was, because I think you were kind of in between. Like, I think in early 2020, you cleared the board in terms of your prior commitments. And then you started this journey, with the likes of Bob Hurley and then Pat O'Connell. And now, as very recently, your two brothers. It's pretty cool, man. It's pretty cool to see how that journey's gone on for the last 4 years, and just the response that people have gotten. But thinking all the way back to that first conversation, like, What were you thinking when you were like, okay, I've my prior commitments are over. I can maybe do my own thing. I'm guarantee you were probably getting courted by a number of other brands. How did you make that decision to go, instead of taking the money with these other brands, I'm going to do my own thing?
Yeah, it was not an easy decision. It was definitely tough, but I think I've been very fortunate in my career of being in a position to be able to make that decision and to be able to confidently go like, okay, I really want to try this. And I've always been like a person of like, uh, oh, that sounds pretty fun to kind of create something and build something and start something. And I love the product side of it. Like for me, and my brothers now too, like it's like all we talk about, and it's like trying to make the things the best we can. Um, so it was this like a lot of excitement and a lot of like, oh, this sounds pretty fun to just build something, be able to create something, kind of do it the way I want to do it and the way I see kind of our lives around the ocean and try to share that through that. But it was definitely nerve wracking and scary to start that. And, the thought in the beginning was like, I hope one day like this becomes a thing and I can have my brothers a part of it and this whole thing. And it's crazy to look like it's been only been a few years and to see where we are now and have my brothers part owners of the company and just be, I feel like, in such a good place with it and growing so fast and building the stuff that we kind of always dreamed of building. I don't know. I guess, yeah, it just started from that kind of project based thought of like building something.
Yeah, and I mean, as someone who's, I guess I've worked in the industry for a long time, if you count this, but like, I mean, even we talked about before, you're such an organized guy and you are so product minded. It really feels like Florence Marine X was born out of that. And not to kind of knock any other companies across industries, but a lot of times you get the like, we're a clothing company for clothing company's sake. And it's like, that's fine. But at some point, like soft goods are kind of all ubiquitous. And when you think back of all like the mega surf brands, like Rip Curl started as a wetsuit company, like Rusty started as a surfboard company, like Quicksilver and Billabong started as board short companies. Like these were less soft goods and more like products that improve people's everyday life, right?
Yeah.
And it felt like that was something that you guys were focused on from the beginning. Like, and I remember very early on, you guys came out with, the hooded rash guard and we all looked at it and I'm like, well, John could kind of pull anything off. He rips. But I remember getting one and thinking like, oh my gosh, this is so like practical. And I've said this story a few times on the podcast. I turned 40 last year. We went to the Mentawais on a boat trip. 75-80% of people had hooded rash guards, and they've never seen that until you guys launched it, but it's the truth, because it's, especially when you're in the tropics, you're like, I can surf for 7 hours in this thing. If I don't have one, like, especially in the middle of the day, like I have to leave in 30 minutes. It's insane.
And so I think like, it was like in that transition that I started wearing them. And right. I was wearing Patagonia's one and I was just like, this thing is insane. Like, I can't believe more people don't use this. Like, me and Nate were tripping. We're like, wait, we just surf for 5 hours and I don't feel that fried. Like,
right.
Why is this not a cool thing? And then, so when we started the brand, it kind of it was like half of a joke of like, I got asked a couple times, like, oh, what's the product you really want to make? And I was like, oh, I want to make a good hooded rash guard. And people kind of laughed and were like, oh, that's funny. Like,
you're like, no, that's my contribution to the meeting, everyone. Yeah.
And so it's crazy what it's become, because I think like a lot of surfers have really adopted it, and it's come be just a part of surfing. I don't know. And
it's totally normal. Yeah,
it just makes it better.
Well, you talked about how awesome it is to have your two brothers as part owners of the company alongside you now. They were not, obviously, when it was founded. They had their own programs going on. They're both amazingly talented individuals as well. If you're open to sharing, did you really stick it to either Nathan and or Ivan in the negotiations when you brought them on board? Were you like, look, like, if you come on your knees and start groveling to me, we can talk about it? Or was it something that was always on kind of the curtain in front of the blackboard in your office, was like, oh, at some point we'll get here?
Yeah, no, that's what it was. It was always a thing of like, hey, at some point we'll get here. And so like, and I think me and the team at Florence were just kind of like, yeah, that would be the ultimate, to have all three brothers on the team. And I think it came sooner than any of us even really imagined it to. But when we kind of started talking about things and things just started working out, it was like, it was maybe more me like, please come do this with me. It's going to be fun. And so, yeah, so far it's been amazing.
Do you have anything you can share with the listeners that's in the hopper, that's in the heater, that you guys are working on product wise? Like, what is the next hooded rash guard that Florence Marine X is going to drop on us?
I think so lately we've been talking about some stuff about more kind of open ocean stuff,
Mm,
for just, and big wave stuff, safety stuff, I guess,
yep.
kind of wrapping our heads around that and seeing like where we can kind of make a big change in that. And we have some really cool ideas, and especially bringing Nate on board. He has
Mm,
so much knowledge of that world, and he's just so fully in it. So it's really fun to have his thoughts on those things for the big wave stuff and safety stuff. And then I think the next round of our like just outerwear gear is going to be really good, and I'm really excited about it because we're just like each time we come out with our outerwear gear and each time we do it, we just refine it, getting closer to what we like. I think ultimately see this goal of it being,
mm.
and that's the fun part about it. But so I think it's for season 25 will be like is really exciting for me.
Look at you, proving my point on how organized you guys are. On the topic of sponsorships, we talked about it. I mean, you've been in the global surfing spotlight, I'd argue, since before that Surfer Magazine cover at 12. We'd heard about you, but you've probably had the bulk of your adult life has been involved with brands in one way, shape, or form. And hearing you talk about the way you've developed Florence Marine X and how it's been very product focused, and you also seem like you were in that kind of rarefied air of being able to choose the brands that you partner with
Hmm.
instead of having to say, oh, look, I really need this relationship. So maybe I don't 100% align with the product or the values, but the job's job kind of thing. And, this is an episode that's brought to us by Yeti. And it seems like a consistent talking point amongst those ambassadors is essentially like, oh, I'd be using the gear even if I wasn't sponsored by them. And
I would pay them
it,
to sponsor me.
they right, like, and it's amazing, and it also pings off of the other point you made about you guys have so many different activities like open ocean, navigation, sailing, and Yeti is such a cool brand because it feels like they have ambassadors from such a wide array of outdoor disciplines, and it's such a cool melting pot of ideas that you get to exchange with each other. But can you talk to us a little bit about when you got involved with Yeti, some of the experiences you've had, and just day to day, what are your go-to products?
Yeah, so I've been involved with Yeti for a few years now, and it's just kind of been the dream partnership for me. Like, I think when we first started talking about it, I was just like, please, yes, anything. And for me in my life, like I just do so many little things outside of surfing that
Mm,
I use the gear. And like you said, like I'm very fortunate enough to be in a position to where like I can kind of pick and like I choose like or I don't want to say pick and choose, but like more of like I get to align with brands that I want to align with and
sure.
stuff brands that I would use the gear anyway. And so Yeti's just been one of those brands, and the team at Yeti is incredible. And I just feel like they really care about making good product that lasts for a long time. And me having my own brand too, and just looking at that and going like, yes, we want to be like this. They do a really good job.
Right.
Um, and so yeah, like I don't know, I use I use Yeti stuff every single day of my life.
I feel you. Have you gotten to engage with any kind of non-surfing ambassadors on trips, or sailing trips or anything yet? Or maybe that's something you're looking forward to.
That's something I'm definitely looking forward to when I have a little more time.
Yep.
I think just
Well, you're a dad now,
the,
so you got plenty of time, right? That's what it
yeah.
is. Yeah.
But just even our tour takes up so much time, and then you get finished with the
Sure.
tour and you get home and you're like, I'm exhausted. I just want to be home. But yeah, Yeti has such a huge range of ambassadors, and so like I would be so excited to go and do trips kind of all over the world if I can. So
For
yeah.
sure. And if I had to put pressure on you this morning, like what was your go-to Yeti product that you use? Is it a coffee cup? Is it a Rambler? What are you using?
I use probably okay, so I use the big coffee mug every single day of my life. I take it with me on tour. I use it at home.
Is it
So I
for
use
coffee though, or are you putting other stuff in it?
I do tea sometimes in it, but
Okay, okay, but a hot
mostly
beverage
coffee.
typically. I gotcha.
Coffee and tea are the pretty much two hot things to drink, but coffee in the morning, afternoon coffee, and tea in the evening. Uh, and then I use the travel bags every trip I go on.
Right.
The ones I've been using for like 3 years now, and I mean, you know how much we travel, so it's pretty
Yes,
fun
I
to
do.
see that. And then the Yonders, what literally the go-to travel as well. Like, so I don't know. I
It's
always
good.
have like
I
Yeti
know I
on me.
asked you for one product, but that I
I
mean
know, I just, but I get too excited.
the truth is the truth. But that's exactly right. No, I feel you. All right, we are going to take one more quick break to get a word in from our sponsors, including
Cool.
Yeti, and when we come back, we will wrap up the podcast. All right, we are back. This is the Lineup Podcast. We're here for the 200th episode. I'm Dave Prodan here with two-time world champion John Florence. John, thank you so much for the time today. And we talked about how you are 31 years young. We've talked about how you've achieved so much in your career already. Can we talk a little bit about goals and motivation? Because as everyone's experienced, I guess, just who's been a fan of yours, and certainly as we've talked about in this conversation, you've parlayed like a singular excellence in surfing into all these different parts of your life, whether it's parenting, whether it's business, whether it's sailing, exploration, etc. You know, when you start the 2025 year, do you have any idea what just your personal and professional goals are going to look like at this point?
Yeah, it's so tough. Each year I take it as it comes, kind of, and I kind of like start making my decisions of what I'm going to do that like during the end of the previous year.
Mm,
And for me, like it's tough because yeah, I love competing and I love every part of it, but there's so many things that I want to do. Like I want to go sailing and find waves, and I want to be the best parent I can. And so I
mm,
look at all these things and I'm like, uh, and I have my brand, and I'm like really, really love doing all this stuff. But when I pick one, it takes the focus away from the others.
right.
And so I feel like I'm like a kid with like too many toys. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And so, and I guess yeah, it's a really good thing to have. But yeah, so I don't really know what my plan is or what I'm gonna do. And even coming into this year, like last year when I was in El Salvador, I was like, I'm not doing the tour next year. I'm
Yeah.
taking a break. I'm gonna go do something else, and just kind of focus on something else. And here I am. I'm back doing the tour and the Olympics and all of it again. So I really don't know what I'm gonna do. But yeah, kind of take it as it comes.
I think surfing and like the championship tour is such a unique sport in a way because as fans, we love to hold on to people forever. I'm sure Kelly would like go like, oh yeah, no, I would have left years ago, but the people want me. And it's like, oh, we can debate that. But you know, like I think that like when you compare elite surfing to other sports, like we said, you've been on tour for 13 years and essentially have been redlining in terms of performance, in terms of achievement, in terms of winning CTs and winning world titles pretty much the whole time, if not 10 years. If you look at comparative sports around the world, whether it's, you know, elite level soccer or football or basketball or whatever it is, you know, mixed martial arts, a world champion redlining for 5 years is a huge achievement. You know,
Yeah.
10 years is almost unheard of. But I mean, we experienced this at the start of the year with, you know, Stephanie Gilmore took a sabbatical, Carissa Moore, after an amazing career, you know, like stepped away from full time competition. And people got really upset. And it's like, we're so fortunate that we have these surfers on tour for as long as they are, because it's not an
Yeah.
easy thing to do. But I think people think of it as like, it's all fun. Like, why wouldn't you want to do it forever unless you're having a bad time? But it's less that and more just like, hey, it takes a lot. It takes a singular focus.
It takes so much energy, and you know, yeah, like you said, I think we get to travel to all these beautiful places, and it looks amazing, and but it does take a toll over year after year after year of doing it, and for me, having the injuries too mixed into that,
Mm,
and just like, I think those took a ton of energy because it was always like, okay, I'm injured. full red line to get back, full force. I need to get back for the last two events of the year, or the last three events of the year to qualify for the Olympics or whatever it was at the time. And um, it's just takes so much energy. I mean, it's 7 days a week. You're waking up and doing rehab 3 day or three times a
Mm,
day, doing every little thing you can to kind of heal yourself as quickly as possible and as strong as possible.
yeah.
And so, I mean, it gets, yeah, it's a lot. And I think going into so many heats and so many events and feeling that like emotional stress of it every time,
Right.
you, you just get worn out after a while. You're just like, oh man, this is tiring. I don't know how Kelly did it for so long.
It's insane. It'll be awesome to get his unfiltered thoughts on it at some point, I think. But it's funny, this conversation came up relatedly the other day, and I'm getting long in the tooth too. I've been here for 19 years. And when I started, it was a radically different tour, and it was the folks of us, myself included, that were working at the ASP at the time. A lot of us were like, well, we ran away enjoying the circus. We were running from something. And it's like, this is fun. And we weren't there to make money, but someone's going to fund us to travel around the world. And we're going to work on this thing that we think is important. And similarly with the competitors, there wasn't a ton of money outside of a few of them at the time. But, a lot of them were just like, well, it's the lifestyle. I'm going to go party and then I'm going to go do this kind of amazing thing in the water. And it was an interesting thing that I don't think exists as much anymore, which was you had competitors who were very, very human and doing very, very human things, a lot of times doing, mistakes, as all humans
Hmm.
do. But then they go out into the ocean and do supernatural things. And it
Yeah.
was like this amazing tension and spectacle at the time. And it's not just in surfing. You can look at it across any sport. Everyone has gotten so singularly hyper focused on, as you pointed out, like percentage increases, whether it's like diet, fitness, sleep schedule, equipment, psychological strength in terms of competition. And we've seen the performances go up and up and up just in terms of objective performance. But in a way, it almost feels like there's a little humanity lost in that too. I'm not sure, because if you've experienced that being a fan and coming from where you've come to where you are now, because just to contend, you almost have to pursue this monastic approach to life in a way.
Yeah, no, it's crazy now. Like everyone puts so much effort. Everyone is going to bed at 7 p.m. Everyone
Right.
is waking up at 5 a.m. Everyone's on some sort of diet or some sort of training regimen. And it's, yeah, everyone's meditating 19 times a day. It's like,
Right. Right.
I don't know. It's definitely different from when I was first on tour even, I feel
You're
like
right.
it's it's just it's hard and you got to keep up with that. And I don't want to say it makes it like uh it's just different,
It's
it's a
different.
little
Yeah.
less lighthearted and a little less like show up to France and have fun and go party after the event and then go skate and just surf and free surf and film a movie while you're on tour and like all this stuff. Like it's like no, like you have to wipe
Right.
everything away to put it all into this one focus, and then you're
I,
keeping up.
it's interesting. I heard this like a decade ago from a surfing photographer, and they said something to the effect of, "Oh, you'd go on tour as a surfing photographer for a magazine, and you'd watch the world's best surfers. They'd compete and they'd surf at 70%, and then they'd go free surf and go 100%. And they're like, that's where
Mhm.
you saw the best surfing. And they said, that's what it used to be. And they said, now it's the opposite. We're seeing
It's the
everyone kind of
opposite.
70% in free surfs and save it for the live arena of the CT because so much is on the line. I don't know if you think that's fair or not.
It's funny. Like, yeah, I would say it used to be like every free surf session. At least for me, like I don't know about like for me, I felt like I was like had to get clips all the time. I was
Right,
like, I got to do
right,
the biggest air I can,
right, right.
and
Yeah. There goes my board
uh,
that I was going to surf in the heat tomorrow, kind of thing.
yeah, I was riding like my best board. I just didn't care. I was like, whatever. Um, and then showing up to my heat with an ankle brace on.
Right, right, right.
But now it's like everyone's practicing that. Yeah, like you said, that 70% base surfing, like every free surf it is like, and I mean you have a few guys that do, Gabe and Italo and some of these guys really just gnarly at airs. And so it's really fun to watch them. And even in the free surfs, they do it. But
Right.
I think that is their base surfing. That is their 70%
Right.
surfing.
Yeah, that's 70%. Right.
Yeah. Uh, but it's totally that. And I don't know if it's more, I don't know, I guess, but like you said, the performances within heats seems to be more exciting at some points. Guys are
Sure.
sending
Yeah,
massive
100%.
airs and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool to see. And so maybe everyone's
Yeah.
just saving it up for that.
It seems like that's the case, but it's interesting you talked about how when you used to go to France and you're like, oh yeah, like maybe we'll go to the rock food, and have a drink and like, or maybe we'll go free surfing down the beach, or like maybe we'll go and like stuff ourselves with croissants or whatever. Oh, and there's an event on. Like I'm not trying to say one way is better or not. It just felt like there was a lot of, balance isn't even the right word. There's just more to it. Right. And it was just kind
Yeah, I
of
think there's more
like more
to it.
diverse. Yeah.
But I do think that the best, or at least for me, that I'm finding the best way to compete for me is to enjoy where we're going. And I really
Yeah.
feel like I've kind of clicked into that this year,
Yeah.
enjoy where we're going and do the things that I want to do and have fun at, but still like not do things that are going to make me overly tired for the event or kind of bring me down. Only doing these things that kind of bring you up and make you feel
Right.
lighter and happier and like you're really enjoying the place. Um,
I'm
and
glad you brought that up. Yeah.
I think that's the
No, go on,
balance
sorry.
of it. You have to kind of do that. Otherwise it can get too serious. And that's where I've run into in the past where it gets too serious and you're like, wait, this isn't very fun. I don't want to be here. What am I doing?
Right. I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's kind of the insight I was looking for because it does feel like you're not the only one, but it feels like a number of surfers on tour, men and women, are trying to find, I think balance is the right word here, where it's like, no, I can't just live like a monk and just be in an isolated room doing sit-ups until my heat. And I also can't go like crazy and go party until 4 a.m. and then
Yeah.
pretend I can contend. But there has to be a middle ground where you're like, this is a great lifestyle. I want to experience things that are not just competition, but at the same time, I am an elite athlete. I got to protect my body.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it's just finding that balance and whatever. I think every person's going to be different within that. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, it's funny though, because some days you're in Portugal and it's like freezing cold out, hailing, storm. It's not even surfable. And you're like looking outside and you're like, oh gosh, what do I do today? And so like you like need like for me like I'm such an outdoor like physical person. I just like to be doing things whether I'm surfing or in the mountains or foiling or whatever I'm doing. I just like to be doing things, and so it's tough for me on those ones to find that balance and be like, okay, I'm sitting inside. I'm sitting inside. Oh, like I guess I'll read now. Like and then you read for 2 hours and you're like, okay, it's 9 a.m. now. What do I do?
We're going to end our conversation before we get to listener questions with some board talk. You've been riding for John Pizell Surfboards out of Hawaii for, as you can tell me, but it seems like forever.
Yeah, pretty
I
much
think
the
you
beginning.
guys, and your relationship feels like it's been so fruitful, not just because of the achievements you've had on his equipment, but probably because of the insights you've been able to provide him in building better boards. Can you give us a bit of background just on that relationship? And I guess an interesting question is, at any point in your career or during your time working with John, did you ever get close to saying, I might try something different for a period of time?
Yeah, I think there's definitely points when I was a little bit younger when I had kind of people coming going, hey, maybe you should try a Merrick or maybe you should try a Mayhem or a JS or whatever it was at the time. And I think through the years, like I did try a couple other boards here and there, but my relationship with Paizel has just always been so good. And I think I kind of realized like maybe after 2 years of like kind of trying some other boards here and there and just kind of, but Paizel has always been my base like of what I've been riding. I kind of realized I was like, no, like you don't have to do it like everyone else does it. I think for me, like that's what I realized. Like you don't have to go and like try all these different boards and maybe one you're going to surf really good on one because I think building a relationship with a shaper is more important than that. I think when you have
Mm,
that long term relationship, it's really easy for me to tell Paizel like I didn't like this board. This board was not very good, and
right.
like that's like the amount that helps, I feel like is it's incredible because when you can't tell them exactly what you're feeling, how are you ever going to get like a really good board? And so, yeah, working with Paizel has been fun, and I've learned so much about the boards, like in the past few years, especially, and I've really gotten into like knowing why this board has more concave, why this board has more V off the tail, like why these rails are kind of like that, and how much volume I like, and working with him in that sense has been really fun because we've been able to create some boards that I really enjoy riding, and I'm like, wow, this is actually a really sick board that we kind of came up with together. Um, and I don't know, I think having a long-term relationship with someone like that and building things over and over again with them, you really learn how to like work quickly, efficiently, and make something that works really well.
Yeah. It's interesting too, right? We talked about it in the intro, and I think when you get to the championship tour, more or less everyone, man or woman, is an elite level surfer in virtually any kind of conditions. But I think it's not controversial to say that someone like yourself is, top 1% in terms of what you've been able to do in all conditions. And as someone who's been like a pretty close observer of the sport for a long time, I remember the log line on you before you qualified. We were all impressed, but it was a little bit of the, not to say that you guys are the same, but a little bit of the Jack Robinson thing of like, oh, he's really good in barrels. He's got this cool skate style with airs. And I remember you qualified at the midway point in 2011, and we were like, I hope he gets a result before pipe so he can stay on tour kind of thing. But you've developed into someone who, whether it's a 2-foot beach break, you can win. If it's a 6-foot point break, you can win. If it's a 10-foot reef break, you can win. And it feels like you and John Paizel have developed models that can work across everything. It's not always the same model, but you just feel like, especially in 2024, you guys have developed models that are really doing the work and allowing you to surf at your very best in a really unique way. And my question is, what are you packing in your quiver for Tahiti versus Fiji versus the finals at Lowers from John Paizel?
Yeah, so this year has been, I guess, almost a little bit different than any other year in the past. Like I've always been ride one model, and I try to make that one model work in different shapes and sizes for every wave. And then I think having Ross has been really key and helpful because he's really kind of gotten me to be comfortable with riding different boards, totally different models for different conditions. And so this year I've ridden uh, like the most different models, like at changing in between and all over than I have ever before. And so I have my, we're calling it a power tiger, but it was from the Red Tiger series. And then we kind of refined it a little bit to handle like a little more speed and power full waves. And that's kind of my go-to board. And I think that board's gonna be really good at lowers. And then I have my Ghost model, which I've had for a long time, which I ride for a 6.0 and a 6.2. And then from 6.4, 6.6, 6.8, I go to a next step now, which is what I used to ride a lot in barreling waves. But then I kind of went to the Ghost, and now I'm back on that for like Fiji, Chopo, pipe. I'm running the next step. I think it's just a little bit narrower and allows the Ghost is funny. It's like I ride a 6.6 Ghost and the board is really fast. So it's hard to control. It just keeps going. Like, and it's a good thing. Like, and I'm sure a lot of people would love that.
Right.
But for me, the next step is a little bit slower and a little looser. So you can like really control the thing in big barrels, and really knife it under the lip. And I love that feeling of it.
That's
and so, yeah, this year I've just been bouncing between so many models.
Right. And when it comes to lowers, I mean, this was a big inspiration for the formation of the Vissla CT Shaper rankings, where we get to talk about surfboards all the time and, decide the shaping world title more or less. But, I still think this is like an underreported story that Felipe Toledo won a world title on a Dark Arts carbon vacuumed quad from Sharp Eye. And I'm like, that's a big story in my opinion. Maybe it's just an audience of one. But you have a lot of experience working with different technologies as well, just in terms of board construction. Are you planning on incorporating any of that at Lowers this year?
Yeah, so I've worked with dark arts a bunch. Justin's amazing at what he does, and just the work that he does is beautiful. And so I don't think I'll be using it large. Maybe if it's really small, like I have these
Hmm.
small wave carbon boards that are just insane. They're so fun. It makes a wave that's literally 6 inches high for me. Like, and I'm a pretty big guy. Just fun. I get excited for it. And that's pretty cool. But other than that, I like this year I've just been riding kind of PU for my shortboards.
Hmm.
And yeah, I have a couple of really good boards right now, so that I'll probably be riding.
Right on. Well, we look forward to it. We look forward to watching you up in the Paris Games coming up, and then at the Corona Fiji Pro, and of course at the Lexus WSL Finals. Before you go, we put a feeler out for some questions for the 200th. As soon as folks found out who the guest was, I think we melted down our own Instagram account. But thanks to everyone who wrote in questions for John. We've whittled them down to 3 for our purposes. So, first question is from Lee Moore, who says, my hero in surfing, with a blue heart emoji. How do you talk to yourself in the water in fun times and in rough times? Or do you talk to
It's a
yourself in the
good,
water? I guess a good question.
that's a super good question. Uh, Self-talk is just, as for me, has been one of the biggest ones because I'm generally pretty hard on myself.
Mm,
And I wouldn't say like yelling at myself or like bad self-talk, but just more of just like, like I could have done that so much better. Like, damn it, that that was a really bad turn. And so that's like what I've been working on a lot in the last couple of years and just being like, oh, that turn felt weird, but that's okay. Like I'm just gonna it was probably better than it looked, or it probably looked better than it felt. And then I just kind of keep
yeah,
moving
right.
forward, you know? And then when I am really excited and I'm like so talkative, I'm like yelling. I yell a lot in the water when I'm excited and the waves are good. Like if I'm surfing with someone, my friends get annoyed because I tell them to go on every wave. I'm just excited. They're like, that was a bad wave. I was like, I don't know. That looks like a fun one.
Would have been fine. Yeah, it would have been fine for me. I don't know. Yeah, right. That's a good answer, though. I like it. Second question is from @Bruta_Venice, who says, or asks, excuse me, is it true that you'd rather be doing strike missions with your brothers versus competing? That's a spicy question.
Uh, I don't know if it's completely true, but I definitely would love to be doing strike missions and going and surf really the best waves that are happening in the world at any point. That's like, I for surfing for me, I love surfing for surfing. I'll
Right.
surf 8 hours a day if the waves are good. And so that's like the heart and soul of it for me. So yeah, I would love to do that, but there's a part of me that does love competing.
Right. And I think surfing too, for all of us, there's always like a grass is greener thing, right? Like if you're stuck
Yeah.
inside and it's raining and terrible in Portugal, you're like, where's Nate and Ivan right now? What are they doing? They're in the,
Wait, Nate's getting
like,
20-foot barrels in Fiji, and
right,
I'm
right, yeah. Yeah, and then on the other side, there's probably times when it's like, oh my gosh, the boat broke down and it's been doldrums for 3 days, and I've
yeah,
got a 3-degree sunburn, and like the waves are pumping into Tahiti for the event, and that sucks. Yeah, whatever.
yeah.
It's a great question though. And then okay, last one. This person asked it, so I don't have to, which is nice. From Jera Tot. Apologies for that. Where do you see yourself in 20 years? You'll be 51, according to my math.
In 20 years, I'll be 51. My son will be 20 years old, which is crazy to think about.
Oh, you're done. You're
Uh,
done at 10, is my experience. It's like they're on their own. I've got nothing left to offer.
yeah. So I don't know. I hope I am surfing as good as Kelly surfs at his age and still getting barreled and maybe sailing and finding good waves.
Sounds like a good answer. Thanks to everyone who wrote in at the lineup pod. We're now down to our very final segment, which is the lightning round. So these are 10 questions for you to answer as quickly as you can. And we've got your answers from back in 2020, so I can compare and contrast. First question. If you can only have one board setup for the rest of your life, single fin, twin fin, thruster, quad bonzer, or finless, which would you choose?
Presser.
Tracks, coffee, or tea?
Coffee.
Okay. You want to know what you said last time?
Did I really say tea last
You
time?
said, no, you were very political. You said, I have coffee every morning and tea every night. Don't make me choose. I said, okay.
I still do that, but I
Uh,
really love coffee.
but it's funny. I think that as you get older, you're like, this is undeniable. I need this thing. All right, next question: burrito or pizza?
Burritos.
Okay, that's an update
I
to
think
pizza last
I
time.
probably said pizza last time, huh?
Yeah, it just depends on when you catch you. I'm into it. I like burrito. It's a good one.
Yeah, I like burritos.
Last book you read?
The last book I read, I kind of don't read one book at a time. I'm like in the middle of reading three books.
What's one of them that you're enjoying?
Uh, I'm reading one of the Dune series, still another Dune series book. And then I'm reading another book called this one I've been reading, I feel like for like 2 years, but I go in and out of it. Power and Myth by
Yep,
Joseph Campbell. I think we
Campbell.
talked about this
You and I
actually.
talked about this. Yeah,
Yeah. But
that's good.
I like stopped reading it for like a year and then I just got back into it again. And so, yeah, anyway,
Good answer. Best surf film ever?
best surf film ever. And the Summer too for me.
All
Just grew
right.
up watching it. Pato was my hero.
And now you're his boss. That rules. It's good. What is one wave you never have to go back to?
Sorry, say it again.
Oh, sorry. What is one wave you never have to go back to?
One wave I never have to go back to. I can't even answer that. I don't even know. I like all waves.
That's consistent. You said the same thing last time. Although I think, in fairness, the last time we did this, I think we had technical issues, and I think we recorded it when like pipe was pumping. So I'm like, this isn't
Yeah.
gonna go well. We're really distracting. Okay, if you only get to surf one wave for the rest of your life, what's it gonna be?
If I could only surf one wave the rest of my life, it would be pipe because it has just so many faces to it. It's pretty much fun from 2 feet to 12 feet.
Best person to share a lineup with?
Best person to share the lineup with is I like sharing the lineup with my brothers, but I also hate it. Nathan's one of the worst people to surf with.
Okay, so worst person to share the lineup with is
Nathan, I would say the same thing.
okay.
I,
Okay. Last one. Finish this sentence. I will next achieve a state of happiness by.
I will next achieve a state of happiness by finishing this call and holding my son.
It's a great answer. John, thank you so much for coming back on the lineup for our 200th episode. Congratulations on everything you've achieved, certainly in the last few years, but this year in particular, both in and out of the water. Congrats to you and Lauren on your son, and good luck in the Olympics. And I'll look forward to catching you down the track in Fiji and Trestles.
Awesome. Thank you.